Well, good morning. Happy Wednesday. It is Wednesday, the 19th of November, and we have 1 week and 1 day until Thanksgiving, and then and then they're upon us. Thanks for joining me this morning. I hope you're having a great day. It's 52 degrees outside, and out there this morning it felt rather balmy, which I'm not entirely sure what that means, because normally I'm freezing cold at 52. But I wasn't cold out this morning. I ran into a herd of javelina. That was a little bit exciting. I ran into them at one point, and then kind of coming back, I ran into him again. But I ran into the alpha male. He was not happy with me. He was kind of grunting and spitting at me. But I walked by him, and he didn't attack me, so that's good. I've been out a lot in my life. And the only thing that really scares me is those male javelina. I suppose a bear might, and I suppose a mountain lion might, but I don't see bears and mountain lions. I do see javelina though. Anyway, great morning outside this morning. Just very peaceful. I think we're going to get some rain over the next few days. That'll be exciting also. So, that's it. That's great. Hey, thank you for joining me this morning. We've got no birthdays today, and we have a few tomorrow, the 20th. Yeah, actually, I have 3 tomorrow, so that'll be exciting. Because 2 of them are related to each other. So we'll close out that, and we'll close this out. And are you ready for Thanksgiving? Are you ready for the holidays? You know, everybody, they call the day after Thanksgiving Black Friday, and I don't really like that. And some people call Thanksgiving Turkey Day, and it is a day of turkey, that's for sure. But it's also a day to give thanks. I wonder, do people call it turkey because it's less syllables, or do they have nothing to be thankful for? I don't know. Anyway. I love the idea of Thanksgiving. I love the idea of because it really truly is. Thanksgiving and Christmas are and 4th of July. There's just some holidays like where we all pause and reflect and kind of take the day off. There's no expectation of work. And there was a time in our history when Sundays were like that. I mean, how much do you enjoy Thanksgiving? It's because I know that I'm not supposed to be at work on this day. There is nobody that would go into work on Thanksgiving and say, I'm expected to kind of make up for lost time, or whatever. I've got a project due, so I'm going to go in. Nobody goes in on Thanksgiving. It's very, very rare that somebody would go in on Thanksgiving Day. But imagine what it would be like if you had a society where every Sunday was like that. It's like there would be a frowning from everybody around you if you actually did work on that day, that everybody just had that sense of Thanksgiving and relaxation every Sunday. Wouldn't that be just, and it's, you can do that yourself, but wouldn't it be great if the whole society acted that way? And I think that would be, if I were in charge, I would try to get back to that again, where Saturday and Sunday are days you do not work ever. Like the whole society takes it off. All right, enough of that. We will meet today. We'll meet tomorrow, and then all next week, Thanksgiving week, we're not meeting, and then we'll be back again on, is that December 1st? Whatever that Monday is. I guess I could look it up. I think it is December 1st, maybe December 3rd. No, it's December 1st. Okay, yeah. So we'll be off next week, and then we're back on December 1st. So let's get into our study today. This is an interesting one. Let's just read. If you'll remember, previous chapter 16, even in 15, the people are grumbling because Moses and Aaron are in charge. And so this guy named Korah challenges Moses and Aaron. He brings 250 guys with them, and he says, we want to take over leadership. We don't want it to be Moses and Aaron. And Moses complains to God, and God does swallows them up. Basically swallows them up, kills some by fire, and then others by plague. So there's definitely God definitely wants Moses and Aaron to be in charge. But that's always going to be a question. Whenever somebody's in leadership position, the question will always be, why you and not me? That's the eternal question in leadership. And it's a big one. Why are you leading us? And why am I not leading you? And just stop and think about that for a while. Like, why some and others not? And often we think, well, it's this person because they've got certain skills, or they come from a family line, like in kings and queens in England. Selecting a leader is not the easiest thing in the world to do. And once that leader is selected and starts leading, how do you, how do you convince the people that you're leading that you should be leading them? That's a very, very challenging question. So let's just get into this, because we might talk about that. So this is chapter 17. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and get 12 staffs from them, one from the leader of each of the ancestral tribes. Write the name of each man on his staff. On the staff of Levi, write Aaron's name, for there must be one staff for the head of each ancestral tribe. Place them in the tent of meeting in front of the ark of the covenant law where I meet with you. The staff belongs to the man I will choose. The staff belonging to the man I will choose will sprout, and I will rid myself of this constant grumbling against you by the Israelites." So if you'll remember the ancient tribes, the ancestral tribes, there were 12 of them, and they all were from Jacob, who had 12 sons. They ended up in Egypt, and then they ended up in slavery, and then God rescued them. But those tribes are still, it's kind of, after several generations and interbreeding, everybody's part of some tribe. I mean, but we do know that Moses and Aaron were from the tribe of Levi. This was the ancient tribe that will not be given promised land, because they will depend upon the fruits of the ground from the other 11 tribes in order to sustain themselves, because they're going to end up being the priests. And are the priests the leadership? Or are the priests the ones who do the sacrifices to make the people whole before God? In one aspect, the tribe of Levi is in leadership, but only in one lane, and that lane is intercessing before God on behalf of the people. Now, Moses is also from the tribe of Levi, but he has also been given the leadership mantle from God to lead the people out of slavery from Egypt and then carry them through 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. And Moses has leadership chops because he was the central figure that brought people out of slavery in Egypt. And that act in itself should give Moses the authority to lead. All right, so Aaron is going to have his name put on the staff for Levi, and then all the other staffs will be put in front of the tent of meeting, and one of them is going to bud, and whichever one buds, that's the one that's going to lead the people, not lead the people, but be in charge of all the sanctuary duties. So let's keep reading verse 6. So Moses spoke to the Israelites, and their leadership gave him 12 staffs, and their leaders gave him 12 staffs, one for the leader of each of the ancestral tribes. And Aaron's staff was among them. Moses placed the staffs before the Lord in the tent of the covenant law. The next day, Moses entered the tent and saw that Aaron's staff, which represented the tribe of Levi, had not only sprouted, but had budded, blossomed, and produced almonds. Then Moses brought out all the staffs from the Lord's presence to all the Israelites. They looked at them, and each of the leaders took his own staff. So this is a test to see who God chooses for leadership. And basically, all of the staffs representing the ancestral tribes go into the tent, and then coming back out of the tent, only Aaron's staff has sprouted, and this is a sign from God that Aaron is the one who is supposed to be in charge of the sanctuary. And notice who's doing the choosing here. It's God. It's not man. There is something about being a leader and knowing that God has chosen you for leadership. And when you encounter people to say, why are you leading and not somebody else? If God has chosen you, you can say, well, God chose me for leadership. And if you'll know in the New Testament, Jesus chose 12 disciples. Why did he choose those 12 and not any of the other hundreds that were around? Well, Jesus chose, these are the ones I choose. And he went and he actually chose them. Very few, I don't know if any story in the New Testament where people came up to Jesus and said, I want to be part of your clan. I do know that some changed their life because of Jesus, but some of them we don't know actually how they were chosen. I mean, the tax collector Jesus chose Matthew. He chose the sons of thunder. He chose Peter and Andrew. I mean, we know those stories because we see them. We're not entirely sure how the other ones came to be, but even if they came to Jesus and said, choose me, and Jesus does, Jesus still ultimately is the ultimate decider of who his disciples are. So Moses takes the staff in, and now he says Aaron is going to be chosen by God. All right, let's pick it up at 10. The Lord said to Moses, put Aaron's staff back in front of the Ark of the Covenant law to be kept as a sign of the rebellious, and this will put an end to their grumbling against me so that they will not die. Moses did just as the Lord commanded him. The Israelites said to Moses, we will die. We are lost. We are all lost. Anyone who even comes near the tabernacle of the Lord will die. Are we all going to die? So a couple things. One is this puts an end to who should be in charge of the sanctuary, because God chose Aaron for that task from the tribe of Levi. He is going to be the one. And we know that this staff ends up going to the Ark of the Covenant, and it ends up being placed in the Ark of the Covenant along with the manna from the 40 years of wandering in the desert, along with the stone tablets that contain God's law. And these are the three items in the Ark of the Covenant. It's the manna, it's this budding staff, and it's the two tablets of the law. And now Aaron has been chosen. And so he will move forward as the one chosen by God. How are leaders chosen? Have you ever stopped and thought about that? Why? One of the things about starting a business is that you are the de facto leader of that business. And being the de facto owner of the business, you get to choose who you hire, who you fire, what the business is going to do, what products and services, and all those sort of things. And the people who end up starting businesses have a certain spirit about them. They're entrepreneurs. It's a French word, entrepreneur. And they're people who are willing to risk their time, their money, or whatever to form something new that hasn't been formed before. And I've kind of come to the conclusion that there are those who do not want this. They don't want to be in charge of a business. They're most happy working for somebody else. And then there are those who want to start a business because they know that ultimately there could be financial gain from starting something new or challenging or whatever. And then there are those who want to start a business just because they think that they would be a good leader, that they have a spirit about them, that they're willing to take the risk, they're willing to give of their time and their money to be able to start a business. There's a whole bunch of different reasons why a person might start a business, but not everybody is wired that way. And I used to think that this was just a natural thing for everybody to want to start a business, because I've started a couple businesses in my life, but it is not. It's not everybody wants to do this. It takes a certain type of personality, skill, not skills. My goodness. You may not have any skills and still want to start a business. And then you'll learn the skills. But that's one way that people get, put in a leadership position is if they start a business. Another way you could be put in a leadership position is get a degree, an education, and that gives you certain training over other people. And so when it comes to, I think one of the degrees out there that if they're entrepreneurial and they want to start something, I think an MBA is a good degree. That would be a good one to kind of show the world that you've identified yourself as a person who has leadership skills, and so you want to expand on those leadership skills and get an MBA. That would be one way. Another way would be to get specialized training in a certain area and then go work for a firm in that area, and then eventually move up in the firm from a worker up into leadership role. All of these things, I've met some really, in my life, I have come across some phenomenally good leaders. And I've come across some horrible leaders. What makes a leader? What skills does a leader need? I'll tell you at least 3. And it ties into how we love God. We love God with all our mind, all our body, our strength, our heart, and our mind, right? Those are the 3 things that we love God with. And at its root, those 3 things are our body, how we move our body, our mind, how we think about things, and our heart, which is a part of us that operates on an emotional level as opposed to an intellectual level. And a great leader thinks in all 3 of those areas. A great leader has skills and capacities in all 3 of those areas. And I used to think years and years ago that the only thing you needed to do to lead would be an intellectual skill set. But that is not enough. You actually need to have a heart that the people that there's a strong emotional tie, that by leading you are making the lives better of other people around you and impacting their lives in a very heartfelt way. That's one way that leaders lead. The other skill set is doing the right thing, intellectually thinking what can be done and what's the right thing to do. Given 5 different options, which is the one you choose, right? And so you think about that. That's an important skill of leadership. The other is the heart thing, but the other is just the body part of it. A lot of people became leaders because they were great warriors, and so they fight a battle and they win the battle. And so they're elevated in a leadership position because they've won the battle. And that makes you a great leader too, because nobody's going to challenge you. Because if they do challenge you, you're either going to kill them or destroy them, right? I mean, that's another good, believe it or not, that's a good aspect of leadership. At some level, people should fear the leader just a bit. I worked for a guy for about 10 years who was, that was his leadership style. He was, there was power that he, and you knew he had power because if you messed up, he yelled at you. And that is not a bad skill set to have for leadership. The problem in that one is, are you doing the right thing intellectually, and do you have a heart for the people that you're leading? Because if it's all about power and strength in that area, you might yell at somebody and they might be crushed and you don't care because you don't have a heart for them. At some level, you need all three of these things. And it all comes from God. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength. These are the ways that God has created us. And at some level, we must use all of those three things as we love God and as we serve God. There was a guy a number of years ago who came up with a personality profile that took those three strengths, your body, your emotions, and your mind, and divided them further into three subcategories, and developed a personality profile called the Enneagram. Enne from the Greek word 9. So there's three under each of those three. And and he came up with, where do you sit on this circle? And so you take this test and you find out where you sit on this circle. And it's important, I think, to know how you're created, where your skill set is, where your gifts are. It's good to know that, but more importantly than that, it's good to know where you're lacking. If I'd have known that if as a kid in high school, if I'd have known that my natural leadership strength is I think about things a lot, which is true. That's where I come from. Then I would have done exercises or done things in my life to strengthen up the physical side and the emotional side, and worked on those things in parallel. Because when you get to a point where you're leading, you need to have all three. And because I spend a lot of time intellectually, I might ignore the physical body side, and I might ignore the emotional side. And so those are three areas that are needed if anybody's going to be a leader. All right. I think one of the great things about church leadership is that at some level, we who are pastors are called to a congregation. And it's great being called, because it's not like I've put myself in here, but that God has placed me here. And then the people have gathered together and they've affirmed that, right? So there's this sense that you're our leader. And that is a tremendous, tremendous gift and a tremendous responsibility. Anytime you have been placed in a leadership position, it is a tremendous gift and a tremendous responsibility. And all of us are leaders. At some level, all of us are leading our body, our soul, our mind. Like, what I wake up today, what am I going to do? That is my own leadership. So I get to lead me. If you're a parent, you get to lead the kids, right? If you are the head of the household, you get to lead the household. If you have been appointed into leadership or placed into leadership in a business world or a nonprofit world or whatever, then you lead in those areas, and you lead with your strengths. and you find out what your weaknesses are, and you try to plug up the holes of your weaknesses. And that's what leadership is all about. All right. So I'm going long on this, but the idea of leadership, it is great when God puts somebody into place into leadership. I'm of course I'm an intellectual. I think about this stuff a lot. Like, what makes a leader? We had this thing in Vail where we live called the Vail Community Action Board. And it was based upon a government grant that came into a community to provide resources so that the community could come together and say, what are we lacking? Where should we move forward? And that sort of thing. And so I was on that board for a number of years. I ended up being the president of the board, Vail Community Action Board. And we did some things, and eventually a group branched off of that and tried to incorporate back in 2014 our community, and they lost. And then we tried to incorporate again, and they asked me to be in charge of it, and we lost again. But it's one of the questions that always came up was, what right does this board have to make any decisions about our community? And the question is, we have no right. We're just a group of people that have come together and said, here's a weakness that we see, and we want to try to fix that weakness. And that happened a bunch of times. I mean, there were a bunch of problems we saw in the community, and the Vail Community Action Board worked to solve those problems and actually did. So that started to gain us momentum in authority. But there were always those who would come and say, you have no authority at all. And so we're not going to give you authority, and we're going to fight against you because you have no legal or moral or intellectual authority to be in charge of all this stuff. We want to be left alone. And most people want to be left alone. And so really the only way that a board can act with authorities if they're appointed by somebody who has been elected or they're elected. And ergo, why incorporation is so important. Because it gives legitimacy to the decisions that are made and the tasks that are pursued and that sort of thing. Anyway, I'm going much longer than I ever thought I would, but we now know that Aaron's in charge of the sanctuary, that God has chosen him. And so we'll see next time what that means, because with great power comes great responsibility. And I guess we're going to see what that looks like. So we'll have to hold off until tomorrow for that one. So let's close in prayer. Gracious God, thank you for this day, and watch over us until we meet tomorrow. In Jesus' name, amen. And let me go over here, find out if there's any comments. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it, all of you online. Oh, is it raining in Phoenix? You know, I heard that Wickenburg got hammered last night with rain. Which is on northwest of Phoenix. So and that whole rain system that we thought would come through Tucson actually went through Phoenix. So stay dry. We get the next system, hopefully, will come through Tucson, which comes in a couple days. But anyway, all right. So, hey, have a blessed day, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.